What does it mean to lead from the middle? How can we empower students and build student agency in 2024? How can we build systems of continuous improvement in our schools? Welcome back to another episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast, airing live on YouTube every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. My name is Tim Cavey, and my mission here is to warm your heart, spark your thinking, and ignite your professional practice. Today's teacher on fire is Danelle Almaraz. With a focus on continuous improvement, Danelle equips leaders with the tools and mindset needed to enact lasting change by learning from the middle. Leadership development programs at InnovateEd, make that clear, are designed to instill a culture of collaboration, innovation, and growth, empowering educators at all levels to lead with purpose and vision. Connect with Danelle on LinkedIn, on X at Almaraz Danelle, on Instagram dalmaraz007, and at innovateed.com. Danelle, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to light it up?
I'm ready.
Danelle, what a pleasure it is to have you here in the Teachers on Fire virtual studio. As we were talking just a moment ago off air, you've been such a supporter of the podcast, so thank you so much. And you were highly recommended by our mutual friend, Natalie Vardabasso, so I'm excited to get to know you a little bit better and hear about your work today. Before we get into all of that, though, let's dig into your story just a little bit. Tell us about a low moment or an experience of adversity that you've faced somewhere in your personal or professional learning journey, and then describe how you overcame it.
So about 3.5 years ago, I had stumbled across on LinkedIn John Reifschleider. He works for Duke University, and I had a little meet up with him, and he was really digging deep into artificial intelligence. And I was so fascinated with how he was using artificial intelligence to teach artificial intelligence. So I went back to my team and shared with them what I had learned, and I got written up. I got called to HR. I got my very first formal write-up in 30 years of education, and I was just devastated. It was AI is not the next step for this organization. AI is not the next step for education. Take down the posts. I was just flabbergasted. I'd been with this organization for 10 years. And so that was my moment after I got over the heartbreak of, what just happened here. I realized I didn't want to be part of a system that was so tight that there was no room for innovation. That's my 3.5 years later reflection, is I couldn't figure out why it bothered me so much. First, because I never had experienced it. But second, because there's a whole new world opening up and we don't even want to explore it. So that was kind of that moment. And I really wanted to be with an organization that really pushed innovation, especially in education.
What an experience, Danelle, to go through, because we serve so faithfully and we commit so much time and energy and everything that we have in so many cases to these educational institutions that we serve and the students that we serve. And then to be called out or reprimanded in such a way when you're simply trying to learn more is not very encouraging. I know a lot of teachers and educators sort of live in fear of exactly what you just described. So when you look back at your story, are you almost thankful for that moment because it did set you on a separate path?
Yes. And hindsight, at the moment, I couldn't see anything but heartbreak. And as a people pleaser, as one that just wants to help, and my husband thought I was joking. Like, I worked 10, 12, 14 hours for this organization, gave them my heart and soul. And he kept saying, "You're lying. You're joking me, right?" And I go, "No, I'm not kidding." And so it truly did. And it helped me also see that I wanted to empower others in education to have that moment where they could try innovation. But it definitely was pivotal in the change from a consultant role of do it this way to a coach role of let me help you where you want to learn. Where do you want to go? So that was kind of a pivotal time for me.
There are so many different responses that schools and districts can have to AI and what we sometimes call the AI revolution. But I know one response that doesn't work is just to bury it and not talk about it. That's
Right.
definitely not the way forward. So I have a feeling that institution will have some regrets, let's say, in a decade's time or so. Let's continue on to your current work, Danelle, where you are the Chief Impact Officer for InnovateEd, a firm that partners with school districts to create systems of continuous improvement. Can you say more about the vision of this work? It sounds so cool.
So the big vision is, first of all, is there a strategic focus? As teachers, we know it's just add, right?
Right.
It's just too much, too much. Let's really have a strategic focus. And also let's sit down and talk about the change in education. What do student success indicators look like now? What do we want kids to be able to do? What habits do we want them to form? And it's a learn by doing model. It's let's try something different. And then lastly, know thy impact. Teachers work really, really hard, but we often don't sit down and say, is that working? We continue doing routines or systems that aren't working for kids. If we haven't figured out that for students and teachers, education at the current moment is not working, we need to open our ears and open our eyes, that we need to start trying something different.
So much good stuff there. Your mission is also tied to this idea, Danelle, of leading from the middle. So say more about that. What does this phrase mean to you, and why is it such an important idea in education right now?
Think of it as I want schools and districts to move away from hierarchies to huddles. Imagine teachers huddling with kids and talking about inquiry and what do we want to learn about. And then at the next level, the teachers with the principal having a huddle to say what's going well, what's not. And then at the district level, district folks meeting with principals saying what's working, but in a huddle type rather than the hierarchy of top down, here's what you're going to do. I think it's so important at this moment because if we want teachers to empower students, they need to know what that feels like in an education setting. They cannot empower the kids unless they are empowered. And then lastly, the teacher leader pipeline. If we don't change things and let teachers be empowered, we aren't going to have any teachers left to be principals or district office. So we really need to be sure that we're growing them. And that's what we do with the site leadership teams. I get to meet with 12 to 15 teachers along with their site administration, and we do this work together so that they are in the huddle, they are running. It's a lead from the middle model because many schools I work with have had 5 principals in 3 years. How do you do anything sustainable or 2 or 3 superintendents in a number of years? So we really have to get to the point of leading from the middle. I just had a school district that the principal left. And the site leadership team said to me, Danelle, we want to be on the interview panel because we want to be sure that the person they hire is aligned to what we're working on. We've been working on this for 3 years. We aren't about to abandon it. That's what I want. I want them to not wait for someone to come and tell them what to do. I want them to sit down with the principal and say, here's what we've been working on for 3 years. Here's your onboarding of what we need support with, what's working, what's not. We really need to change that dynamic because hierarchies in this system are not working.
I really resonate with something you said there when you describe that core, that leadership within the organization that is not tied to the, let's say, the top title. Then the work can continue and be sustained. And then hopefully you're hiring, or schools are hiring that leader that comes in and looks around with sort of an appreciative lens and says, here's what's going on well. Here are the strengths of the organization. I want to just continue to support and work with what has already been established rather than upsetting and resetting every single time there's a change in leadership. Do I have that right?
Exactly right. Allison Absey says it. We often go in as new administrators and we meet with the teachers and they're like, I want this to happen and I want this to happen. And we think as the leader, we need to do those things. Instead, let's step up on the things that are going well. Let's continue those things that teachers are behind. what when you come in as a leader and you don't sit and listen and see what's going well, it makes the teachers feel like, "What, you think we've been doing nothing this whole time? Like, we were waiting for you to come and let us know what we need to be doing." We don't want that. We really want them to have ownership and be empowered, so that you're right, so that change can be sustainable.
Another core idea or concept belief that I saw in your work, Danelle, is this idea of student empowerment. So, say a little bit about that. When you think about the schools and districts that you work with, what would you like to see in terms of empowering students, building student agency and ownership over their learning in 2024? I know there's a lot that we could say here, but what comes to mind?
I think just start simple. Start with just giving kids some voice and choice. I have 5 children. I didn't let them just pick whatever they wanted to wear. I'm like, "You can wear this outfit or this outfit," because I didn't have time for that. Imagine that. We can just give kids a little voice and choice, give them some time to reflect, and I think this is the one thing I see missing often is debrief with them. How did that lesson go? Did it resonate with you? Did you like the article we read or the podcast you listened to? Did the collaboration time, was it successful? We don't often debrief with the kids and then make agreements as a learning entity to say, what are we going to do better tomorrow? What is the one thing I could do better tomorrow as the teacher? Give us more time to talk, let them lead it a little. Let it be more empowerment and student-centered environment.
Students are so used to being spectators and sort of being
Mm.
taught to, and when we invite reflection, when we solicit their feedback, we're actually communicating your voice is important. You are a big part, hopefully more than a part of this process. You should be owning this process. And well, I mean, the age dependent there, but yeah, I think that it sends all kinds of good signals and we overlook the power of that. I think when we're only looking at student reflection as what can this data provide me, that's a narrow view of what student reflection is all about, right? Danelle, I believe your work has also taken you to Africa. Can you share some of the details about what this looks like?
Oh, so one of my passion projects is UNESCO did a report on the need for 15 million more teachers in Africa by 2030. They now are educating the girl child. And so they were already short teachers. So part of my passion project is we have lots of educators in Africa that are trying things. They set up a program called 1 Million Teachers, and it's really flourishing. They asked for applications for any educators that wanted to do an inquiry cycle. Let's try something, see how it goes. They had like 1,000 applicants. They were only taking 10. And so I became part of what they call the incubator program. So if you're picked for the 10, you go on this path. I take the other 990 and we put them in little groups so that we can keep incubating their ideas and moving them forward because, the solutions I think that we need in education come from collaboration. They're going to come from some idea. And so we don't want to squash all those 990 ideas without having them a mentor. So I mentor the people in the incubator program to help them come up with solutions for this $15 million, 15 million teacher deficit.
What a challenge. What a challenge they are facing over there. Well, I commend you for that work. Something you said triggered a question for me that I meant to ask you earlier in the conversation, and that is you talked about inquiry. And I wonder if you are familiar with this idea of the spirals of inquiry and this, it's kind of a separate or a unique vision of professional learning, professional development, where it is very much teacher guided. Is that something that you recommend or support in the schools and districts that you work with?
Oh, 100%. That is kind of the hub of everything of let's come up with a problem you want to solve. Let's come up with
Mm-hmm.
an inquiry question. And then we take them through an analyze, design, implement, refine, where we go through these cycles to say what's working, what's not, so we can just keep continuously improving. Change that we're talking about to go from the traditional gradual release, I do, we do, you do lesson design to something like project-based learning or personal competency-based learning, right? That's going to be a giant shift. That is not going to come from top down, like today we're going to start doing this. It's going to come from within of let's try something different. let's try a different lesson design. Let's discuss how it's going. What can we do to change it? But yes, I really believe that is going to be so important to move forward.
I mean, so many of the same values that we know are important for our students when we talk about agency and ownership. There's no engagement like a professional learning spiral of inquiry when teachers are owning their own learning and development. Talk about a success story, Danelle. Now, I'm sort of casting this net wide, but I'm just thinking, I'm conscious of the fact that you interact with so many different schools, districts on different continents. So I wonder, is there a particular school somewhere that you would say, wow, there are really good things happening there right now?
Oh, right now I would say Park City, Utah. At the state level, they've done a really great job at putting together a profile of a graduate, of the competencies that are important. They have learning progressions already set up, of rubrics. So I would say Park City, Utah is really moving forward. They've had a couple schools that have grown just unbelievably, 20, 30% proficiency, 40%, 70% in some grade levels, just because the clarity of focus and the shared leadership. They really have honed in on those two key drivers. And now they're really starting to hum as far as the continuous improvement cycles to become, to change instructional design to more personalized competency based learning.
Well, shout out to Park City, Utah. That is amazing. Sounds really cool. And that's maybe a school I'll have to do some poking around and exploring after this conversation. Danelle, let's start to transition to some rapid fire questions here. Outside of education, what's another area of learning for you? What is it that ignites your passions away from professional learning and brings you alive as a human being?
Oh, it's going to sound so dorky, but it's math. Math
Okay.
has been my passion forever, so it still lands in the education realm, but whenever I have free time, right now I'm reading Building Thinking Classrooms. I taught math for 20
Mm.
years to middle schoolers. It took me about a week to realize I was selling a commodity they didn't want. No one loved math, and so I oftentimes go back to just trying to figure out how do we make education in math more relevant for kids. Why do they need to learn the Pythagorean theorem, right? Why do they need to learn these topics?
I am really holding back, Danelle, on building thinking classrooms. You dropped that there, and I want to jump into that, but let's keep going. Share about a personal habit or productivity hack that contributes to your success and keeps your fire burning. And as I ask this, I'm mindful that in your current role, as I understand it, there's a lot of self-starting, right? I imagine that you have to really direct your own work. So is there a daily kind of habit or hack that you rely on to keep yourself productive and on track?
I would say my biggest is collecting what I call most valuable points for
Mm.
myself and for the people that I coach. So at the end of every session, I ask them either on a post it note or somehow I collect from them, what was your most valuable point? And so that I can see, I walk in with, I really want to help them with these things. The MVP lets me know, did I master that? Did we get to that? Or was something else that I shared that resonated with them? Because oftentimes, even teachers, the beginning and the end of the lesson are the most important, but we don't stop and debrief and reflect. Even to the point sometimes I have them just all stand up. Somebody gives their MVP, and if your MVP is the same, you sit down. So at a glance, high yield, low prep, I can see, well, 10 people sat for that. Or, gee, in a room of superintendents, 20 resonated with that point. They also get to see who thinks like them, right? So, high yield, low prep ways. So, that's one that I do often. I'd say the second is I've tried to let go a little bit. I'm a very A type person. And so I often found myself doing things for them. Like, let me go, I'll go home and finish up that PowerPoint for you, or I'll go home and do this. It's not the best because they don't own it. So letting go a little bit. And I think that's some advice that, you can give teachers is we need to not be doing anything for them that they can do for themselves. Let go just a little bit.
Just a little bit. That's such an important idea. I have to ask, going back to the go round of the MVP, I think that's so cool. It's such a simple exit slip, but it gives you such great feedback as a facilitator. Are you ever disappointed by the response where you feel like, oh, the focus of my workshop was this, but a lot of people seem really, really
Mm.
inspired by this little wrinkle over here?
I live on a daily basis just to be curious. I,
Yes.
which I am never judgmental. Even teachers that sometimes are a little combative, I sit in a space of, gosh, I wonder what has happened to them that has made them resistant. Something's happened. And so I really try and come from a place of curiosity. So when they do give me something that like this really hit home for me, and sometimes it's just one little statement I made. The whole day was about something else, but something resonated with them, and that's what I want to know, because that's important to go to the next one, because I want to be better the next time. Like, oh, that really hit home for quite a few people. And it was just a simple, you know, part of the presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny what sticks sometimes, right? Point us to an ed tech tool or an app that you currently love using somewhere in your professional practice.
Perplexity.AI has been my
Oh,
fascination lately. Oh, you got to
okay.
download it. It's an app. No more Google search. This gives you the answer to your questions. I give it to all of the administrators I coach. Explain to me designated ELD time, and it gives you resources. You click and it'll tell you the resources. You can ask for a video, you can ask for an article, research. The other one is creating my own GPTs. So things that I do on a regular basis, I have begun to create my own GPT, to answer questions. Even as far as for principal coaches, I've created one for them that they can go in and ask questions and get instant feedback.
Danelle, I am such a big fan. I mean, I already was a fan, but now I'm just fanboying because you are one of these amazing people that is creating that are creating their own GPTs, and I don't even know the first thing about how to go about that, but it sounds really cool. I will say that. I have a friend now who knows how to do that. Okay. Tell us about a book, Danelle, that's been really influential. Maybe one of your all-time faves or one on your bookshelf recently.
I have a couple. One is Schools on the Move by Jay Westover and Chris Steinhauser. It's kind of the what we use for principals. It gives them scenarios and problem solving. Like, what do you do when some of the staff's resistant? What do you do? And so it really is a guide for them. The other one is Allison Absey's Leading the Whole Teacher. I think we really have to step back a little bit and really understand that these are human beings and they need to be loved on, they need to be supported, they need to be inspired. No one has ever worked harder by being written up. We need to figure out how to inspire, how to empower, and that's another one of my favorites. So those are the two that I read ongoing and recommend ongoing.
Okay, great authors there. Now, speaking of human beings, I've got a couple of people questions for you. First one, who's been really inspiring you on social media, either on what I call Education X, Instagram, LinkedIn, maybe even TikTok? Is there someone that's been igniting your professional practice recently?
Oh, so on Instagram, it's Catlin Tucker.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
all about blended learning and different models, and just gives all these high yield, low prep ways to engage and empower students. LinkedIn, it's Katie Novak. Jason Gulia does a lot with artificial intelligence. So if you're a teacher wanting to know how do I integrate artificial intelligence, and Kyle Wagner is working, he does a lot of sharing about shifts that we need to make to become a student centered ecosystem. So those would be the ones that really inspire me on a regular basis.
Okay, some great names there. Some are so awesome that I've been like afraid to invite them onto the podcast, but I think it's time, Danelle. You're giving me some confidence here. And then in terms of speaking, is there someone that you've heard recently, maybe on a podcast or on a stage, who really inspired you, who you think might be a great guest on the Teachers on Fire podcast?
I'd say the 1 million teachers, the CEO Hakeem Subair, just he's amazing. And then Kyle Wagner, they're two people that are really kind of on the cusp of something giant exploding. So I think those two would be great guests.
The last one here, Danelle, is just for fun. What are you streaming right now on your downtime when you've got no brain energy left for anything productive? What are you tuning into on Netflix or some other streaming service?
I'm not a big TV watcher.
Okay. All right. Hey.
Dodgers. My spare time is either watching the Dodgers, going to Dodger games. We tape it, we sit down, we get ready. I turn my phone off. I'm 100% engaged. But yeah, not so much streaming. I'm not a big TV watcher except for the Dodgers.
Fair, very fair. Well, the Dodgers certainly had a lot of the media attention starting off this season, and and we wish them well. Danelle, as we close, I always give my guests an opportunity to share where the Teachers on Fire listening can get a hold of them and connect online, but also make it clear to our listeners as well exactly what it is you offer and maybe who might want to connect with you in terms of taking advantage of your services.
Oh, so schools and districts that are ready to embark on a journey of continuous improvement, where we can work with your leadership teams, we can coach administrators, even district administrators. So we love what we do. We really want to dig in, and it's a 3 to 5 year commitment. We don't do anything for a year because you can't make a turnaround in that time, but 3 to 5 years with the right partners, working on continuous improvement and really building that teacher leadership pipeline. LinkedIn, I post on LinkedIn quite often, Facebook, Instagram. Those are all places you can kind of follow, and I share my adventures and journeys and some of the challenges. So hopefully that they would be helpful.
Let me give you one quick follow-up too, in terms of you working with districts. Is it all in person or do you offer some virtual services as well? And apologies if I missed that.
No, good question. So we tailor it however they want. So
Okay.
in person, we normally start everything in person to, it's about relationships to get them to trust and try something different. And then sometimes the administrative coaching or, gosh, I ran into this problem, then we just jump on a Zoom or we have regular administrative Zoom meetings so that I can help coach the principals or the district office folks.
Sounds so good, Danelle. Again, I want to thank you for sharing your time with the podcast today. This has been fun and inspiring and great to get to know you in person. I've seen you, we've interacted on LinkedIn for a few weeks, but it's been great to just hear your voice and get a sense of your passions. Teachers on Fire, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you too decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast or watching this video. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from Danelle Almaraz sparked your thinking and ignited your practice, and I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Hustle hard, hustle every single day.